For more than a decade, the people of Fannin County, Texas, have been haunted by one unanswered question: who killed Jennifer Harris? Once a month, dozens of riders saddle up for a group ride called Riding for Justice. They don't ride for sport, they ride for Jennifer. She was loved here, one rider says. Everybody wants this case solved. Another adds, to let something like this go on for so long, it's just not right. Jennifer Harris wasn't just another name. She was family. She was a sister, a daughter, a friend, someone people still talk about 15 years later. And yet this thin stack of papers, this is all that remains of the official investigation. When the current sheriff looks down at the file, even he admits the truth. That's all we've got to work with. For Jennifer's family, that truth is unbearable. There isn't a single day I don't think about my sister. Her younger sister says, she was amazing. I wish I had even a handful of the friends she had. Jennifer was the red-haired goofball, funny, warm, lovable. A Lucille Ball type who smothered the people she loved with affection. And then, on Mother's Day 2002, she vanished. It was supposed to be an ordinary day. Jennifer Harris stepped outside, just like she had countless times before. A walk, fresh air, time to clear her head. Nothing about that day hinted at danger. Nothing screamed that this would be the last time anyone would see her alive. At least, not at first. Later that evening, a Jeep appeared on the side of the road near a local music spot, an area familiar to people in town. Cars parked there all the time. No one panicked. No one called the police. It didn't feel urgent. Just another vehicle, just another night. But when the sun rose the next morning, the Jeep was still there, and that's when something shifted. People slowed down as they passed it. They stared a little longer than before. Someone mentioned it to a neighbor. Another person mentioned it to a friend. By the end of the day, the same uneasy question was being whispered over and over again. Why is that Jeep still here? Then the phone rang. Jennifer's Jeep had been found. The news hit her family like a sudden drop in temperature. Cold, sharp, immediate. A single question echoed through their minds, louder than everything else. Why would Jennifer leave her Jeep on the side of the road? Jennifer wasn't careless. She wasn't reckless. She didn't just abandon her vehicle and disappear. Nothing about that made sense. And when something doesn't make sense, fear fills in the gaps. Days passed. Hope thinned. Every passing hour made the silence heavier. Then came the call no family ever wants to receive. A fisherman was casting his line into the Red River when he saw something that didn't belong there. Something pale, something still, something human. A body. Jennifer's father rushed to the bridge, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through his chest. Police cars lined the road. Red and blue lights reflected off the water. Deputies moved with grim efficiency, their faces telling him everything before a single word was spoken. I remember saying, "Let me see her." He would later recall, "Is it her? It can't be her." But it was. Jennifer's body was pulled from the river, completely naked. No clothes, no shoes, no personal belongings. Nothing left to protect her dignity. She was disposed of like trash. Her family said through tears, she didn't deserve that. The image burned itself into their memories, one they would never escape. The medical examiner examined what the river had returned and delivered a conclusion that felt more like a placeholder than an answer: homicidal violence. What did that mean? Was she strangled? Was she beaten? Was she shot? No one could say. There was no clear cause of death, no murder weapon, no suspect, only questions. Questions that multiplied instead of fading. 15 years later, those questions still hung in the air when Mark Johnson took office as sheriff of Fannin County. One of the first things he demanded was Jennifer Harris's case file. He expected thickness, weight, substance. 15 years of investigation should leave behind something solid: evidence, timelines, leads waiting to be revisited. Instead, when he opened the boxes, he was stunned. Most of what remained was paper, duplicate reports, old newspaper clippings, faded missing person flyers. Critical evidence was missing. Jennifer's laptop, gone. Clothing believed to be hers, gone. Evidence that might have held answers, destroyed. Not by fire or sabotage, but by neglect, stored improperly, left exposed, flooded when storage containers leaked, paper warped and stuck together. Ink blood, labels vanished. The file was very light. One investigator admitted it was a mess. There were signs of effort, yes, but also signs of chaos. Reports repeated over and over, but no forward momentum. No clean chain of custody. No preserved forensic trail. Jennifer's case hadn't just gone cold. It had been mishandled. And that realization brought a new kind of pain. Because a cold case suggests time passed, leads faded, witnesses moved on. But mishandling meant something worse. It meant opportunities were lost, evidence compromised, answers possibly destroyed before anyone even realized what they were holding. For Jennifer's family, it felt like losing her all over again. Not just to violence, but to failure. Failure to protect evidence. Failure to document properly. Failure to give her the justice she deserved. 15 years later, all that remained were fragments of paper of memory of grief. And one haunting truth, somewhere between the moment Jennifer went for a simple walk and the moment her body surfaced in the Red River, the truth slipped through the cracks, and it has never been recovered. On Mother's Day evening, Jennifer Harris was doing something ordinary, almost forgettably so. She was at her friend Christy Farr's place, sitting in familiar comfort, talking the way friends do when there's no reason to rush the night. Laughter drifted through the room. Time moved without urgency. Nothing about the evening hinted that it would become the final calm before everything collapsed. There were no arguments, no nervous glances at her phone, no sudden change in her voice, just normalcy. As the clock edged closer to 8:00 p.m., Jennifer stood up, casually, almost absent-mindedly. She said she had to go, not in a hurry, not with concern, just a simple statement like someone stepping out to run an errand or head home. She didn't say where she was going. She didn't say who she planned to see. She didn't suggest anything was wrong. She hugged her friend, walked out the door, and disappeared into the night. Jennifer Harris never came home. At first, there was patience. Maybe she stopped somewhere. Maybe she stayed out late. Maybe her phone died. In a small town, people don't panic immediately because panic feels like overreaction. But as hours passed, patience curdled into dread. Calls went unanswered. Voicemails piled up. Night turned into morning with no word from Jennifer. By the next day, fear had taken control. Law enforcement stepped in and did what they always do in cases like this. They looked inward, not at strangers, not at shadows, but at the people closest to her, the ones who knew her routines, her secrets, her habits. Two names rose to the top almost instantly. Her ex-husband, Rob Holman, her former boyfriend and business partner, James Hamilton. Both men had been deeply intertwined with Jennifer's life, emotionally, financially, personally. Both had histories with her that stretched beyond friendship, and both had reason to be asked uncomfortable questions. Police contacted them. Both agreed to talk. Both came in without lawyers. Both sat across from investigators in sterile rooms. Both were read their Miranda rights, an unusual move so early, before either man had officially become a suspect. It set the tone immediately. This was not a casual conversation. James Hamilton went first. He appeared calm, cooperative. He told investigators he hadn't seen Jennifer that night. He said he was more than an hour away at a McDonald's spending time with a friend. He gave details, locations, times, names. When asked to take a polygraph, he agreed. He passed. His alibi was accepted. The focus shifted. Rob Holman's interview felt different from the start. He, too, denied seeing Jennifer that night. His words were measured, but his explanation raised eyebrows almost immediately. Rob told investigators that he had spent nearly 5 hours driving alone on rural roads. No destination, no purpose. Just driving. 5 hours. In the dark on back roads. By himself. There were no witnesses to confirm it. No receipts. No phone records that placed him anywhere specific. Just his word. Investigators pressed harder. Why so long? Why those roads? Why alone? The story held until it didn't. Under mounting pressure, Rob said something he hadn't mentioned before. Something that made the room go quiet. He told investigators he had seen Jennifer's Jeep that night. She was in front of me, he said. She was coming from town. The timeline didn't make sense. Jennifer had already been missing for 72 hours by the time Rob made that statement. If he had seen her that night, if he had truly known where she was, why hadn't he said so sooner? Why wait? Why mention it now? The admission changed everything. It placed Rob near Jennifer during the narrow window when she vanished. It contradicted his earlier statements, and it raised a question investigators could not ignore. If Rob had seen Jennifer that night, but James sensed the shift. He noticed Jennifer pulling away, the emotional distance, the guarded conversations, the sudden privacy around her phone. When confronted, Jennifer denied nothing directly, but revealed very little. Silence became her defense. Tension filled every room they shared. James oscillated between suspicion and desperation. He accused, he apologized, he promised change. Then he demanded answers he wasn't ready to hear. Their arguments grew sharper, louder, more personal. Every unresolved grievance resurfaced at once. And still, Jennifer said nothing about Rob or the pregnancy. Inside, fear began to replace hope. What if she was wrong? What if the pregnancy wasn't real? Just a stress-induced belief clung to by a woman who needed something to hold on to. The uncertainty gnawed at her. Each passing day without confirmation felt heavier than the last. But she delayed testing, delayed knowing, because once truth arrived, fantasy would have nowhere left to hide. Meanwhile, Rob grew uneasy. He asked questions Jennifer avoided. Practical questions, grounded questions. Ones that required real answers, not emotional reassurance. Could she move back? What about Dallas? What about James? What about money? Jennifer responded with emotion, not plans. She spoke of love, of history, of destiny, of how some people are meant to find their way back to each other no matter how long it takes. Rob wanted to believe her, but belief came with consequences, and consequences required certainty. The distance between what Jennifer wanted and what she could realistically offer widened with every conversation. Rob felt himself standing at the edge of something familiar yet frightening, a chance to repeat the past, or finally break free from it. Then the pressure closed in from all sides. Financial stress, emotional exhaustion, a crumbling relationship, a marriage that existed in name but not in truth. Jennifer's world felt like it was collapsing inward, leaving her fewer and fewer places to stand. Secrets multiplied. Each one demanded protection. Each one increased the risk. And then suddenly, time ran out, because secrets never stay quiet forever. Someone noticed inconsistencies, a conversation overheard, a timeline that didn't make sense, a lie told too casually to withstand scrutiny. The delicate balance Jennifer tried to maintain began to fracture, and once cracks appear, collapse is never far behind. Jennifer stood at a crossroads she had spent years avoiding. Go forward and face the damage, or go backward and relive it. But what she didn't realize, what she couldn't see yet, was that the choices she was making were no longer just about love, regret, or survival. They were about control, and control, once lost, rarely returns without a cost. Because when people feel cornered, when dreams fail, relationships unravel, and the future disappears, desperation doesn't whisper, it screams. And what comes next would ensure that Jennifer, Rob, and James would never escape one another. Not in memory, not in consequence, and not in truth. The missing uterus changed everything. Not because it proved anything, but because it poisoned everything. During the autopsy, investigators noted the absence almost immediately. In most cases, decomposition explains much, water explains more. But this detail felt different. It felt targeted, intentional. And once that idea entered the public mind, it refused to leave. Bonham was a small town. Small towns don't need proof. They need stories. And this one spread fast. People whispered in grocery store aisles. They speculated in church parking lots. They repeated the same questions in different voices. Was Jennifer pregnant? Was someone afraid of what an autopsy might reveal? Was the truth removed before it could speak? Forensic experts tried to calm the speculation. River animals, they explained, often consume soft tissue first. Organs can disappear without human involvement. It was scientifically plausible. But science rarely defeats suspicion, especially when grief is involved. Jennifer's best friend told police what Jennifer herself had believed, that Rob was the father, not James, Rob. That belief reframed every known interaction, every secret meeting, every unanswered phone call, every awkward pause. Rob did not deny the conversation. He admitted Jennifer had told him she was pregnant, but he dismissed it. He said he didn't believe her. And that single statement followed him for years. Because disbelief can look a lot like rejection, and rejection, when combined with fear, has consequences investigators are trained never to ignore. Still, there was no physical evidence, no weapon, no witnesses, no confession. The case stalled where so many others do, in the gray space between suspicion and proof. Years passed, files gathered dust, leads went cold, people moved on or pretended to. Jennifer's family didn't either. Her father continued to drive back roads long after hope had thinned into habit. He never stopped looking, not for answers anymore, but for peace. 8 years after Jennifer disappeared, investigator Daryl Parker decided to try one last thing. Timing, he believed, mattered, so he chose Mother's Day, the anniversary, a day already heavy with memory. Parker visited Rob Holman at home. No confrontation, no accusation, just conversation and photographs. Sometimes images say what questions cannot. Rob flipped through them slowly. Then he stopped. One photograph held him. Jennifer in muddy water, her face partially visible, her hair clinging to her skin. The image was stark, unforgiving, impossible to rationalize away. Rob froze, not angry, not defensive, just still. Parker noticed it immediately. Seasoned investigators always do. There's a difference between someone who is disturbed and someone who is recognizing something. Rob said little, but his body said everything. The meeting ended without resolution. Parker left, uncertain but unsettled. Then hours later, his phone rang. It was Rob. He said he wanted to talk, really talk. They agreed to meet the next day. For the first time in 8 years, it felt like the door might finally open. But when Rob arrived, he wasn't alone. A lawyer sat beside him, and the silence that followed was absolute. Rob said nothing. No clarification, no explanation, no emotion. Just legal boundaries where vulnerability might have been. Parker watched the moment slip away in real time. Years of unanswered questions collapsed back into themselves. Whatever Rob had felt the night before, whatever the photograph had unlocked, was now sealed behind counsel and consequence. That's where I screwed up, Parker would later say. I should have gone that night. Because investigators know something most people don't. Truth doesn't wait. When it surfaces, it does so briefly, unpredictably, and often only once. Miss that window and it may never return. Rob never spoke again. The case remained officially unsolved, but unofficially opinions hardened. Jennifer's family believes they know who took her life, not because of evidence, but because of patterns, because of timing, because of fear, because of what people say when they think no one is listening, and because of what they don't say when it matters most. Jennifer's story became one of those that lives on in fragments. A missing woman, a possible pregnancy, a body found too late to speak clearly, a man who almost talked and then didn't. Justice, in this case, did not arrive with handcuffs. It arrived as uncertainty, and uncertainty, for those left behind, can be its own kind of sentence. Time has a way of dulling outrage but sharpening perspective. Years after Jennifer Harris's death faded from headlines, private investigator Joe Mora reopened the file, not because the case was famous, not because it was trending again, but because unresolved cases have a gravity of their own. They pull at anyone willing to look closely enough. Mora's assessment was immediate and damning. The investigation was extremely weak. No hedging, no soft language, just a statement of fact. He saw problems everywhere. Alibis that had been accepted without verification. Statements taken at face value. Critical early hours wasted on procedure instead of pressure. Interviews that began with Miranda warnings before anyone had been identified as a suspect, effectively shutting down conversation before it ever started. In Mora's view, investigators had played defense from the very beginning. And then there was one name that kept resurfacing. Deborah Lambert. Her report had never gone away. It had simply been buried beneath the weight of uncertainty and time. 1 year after Jennifer's murder, Lambert came forward with a chilling account. She said that on Mother's Day, the same night Jennifer vanished, she witnessed something she couldn't forget. Near the Red River Bridge, Lambert claimed she saw a red-haired woman being restrained by 3 men, not escorted, restrained. The woman appeared terrified, her body language frantic, her movements restricted, the kind of fear that doesn't require words to explain it. Lambert didn't immediately connect the sighting to Jennifer. At first, it was just something deeply wrong she couldn't shake. But as news spread, as details aligned, the realization set in with horrifying clarity. What she might have seen wasn't random. It might have been the crime itself. When shown a photo lineup later, Lambert identified Rob Holman, not tentatively, not maybe. She pointed to him. Her mother, who had been with her that night, told investigators she had witnessed the same disturbing scene. 2 women, same location, same night, same fear. This wasn't hearsay. It wasn't rumor. It was testimony. The Texas Rangers took the lead and investigated the claim thoroughly. They retraced routes, examined timelines, looked for corroboration. But years had already passed and time is rarely kind to truth. No physical evidence tied anyone to the bridge. No DNA, no fibers, no witnesses beyond the 2 women who had already spoken. Without physical proof, the case stalled again. Eventually it was suspended, not closed, not solved, just set aside. Deborah Lambert would never get another chance to testify. She passed away before seeing the case resolved. So did her mother. 2 witnesses gone. 2 voices silenced, not by violence but by time. For Joe Mora, this was the moment the case truly collapsed. Because now the strongest independent sighting tied to Jennifer's final night existed only in reports and memories. No courtroom, no cross-examination, No chance for a jury to decide what credibility meant, just words on paper. And paper doesn't testify. Maura believed that if Lambert's account had been pursued aggressively at the time, if investigators had treated it as a potential abduction in progress instead of an inconvenient complication, the trajectory of the case might have changed entirely. But it wasn't, and that failure echoed through every year that followed. Jennifer Harris's case became a study in what happens when urgency fades too quickly, when early assumptions harden into permanent blind spots, when investigators move on before the truth has fully surfaced. Today, the story exists in fragments. A Jeep abandoned on the side of the road, a woman who never made it home, a body pulled naked from the river, a possible pregnancy that raised more questions than it answered, a man who almost talked and then didn't, a photograph that froze him in place, a witness who saw terror near a bridge on the exact night everything went wrong, and a system that failed to connect those dots while it still could. There is no arrest, no conviction, no final chapter, just a case suspended in time, waiting for something that may never come. For Jennifer's family, justice has become less about punishment and more about acknowledgement, about admitting that what happened to her deserved more attention, more care, more resolve. Because the most haunting part of this story isn't just how Jennifer died, it's how many chances there were to stop the truth from slipping away, and how quietly those chances were allowed to disappear. There have been no arrests, no charges filed, no courtroom, no verdict, no moment where a gavel fell and declared the truth official. On paper, Jennifer Harris's case sits exactly where it has for years, unsolved, inactive, waiting. To some, that makes it cold. Another tragedy filed away, another name added to a list too long to remember. But Joe Moore refuses that label. This isn't a cold case, he says. It's a frozen case. Frozen doesn't mean forgotten. It means preserved, locked in place, waiting for a shift, one crack in the ice big enough for the truth to surface. Moore believes the answers are still there, not buried in evidence lockers or lost reports, but in people, in memories, in conversations that never quite happened. Someone knows what happened to Jennifer Harris. Someone has always known, and that belief is what keeps the case alive. Jennifer's family has learned to live without answers, but not without hope. Her sister speaks carefully now, as if every word carries weight. I don't know how she was killed, she says, but I want justice for her. For my dad. Her father never stopped looking. Even after Jennifer's body was pulled from the river. Even after investigators ran out of leads. Even after the case stalled and then froze. He searched not because he expected to find something, but because stopping felt like another way of losing her. For years, he drove the same roads, crossed the same bridges, looked out across the same fields, watching, remembering, refusing to let Jennifer become just a name. When he passed away, the search didn't end. It changed hands. Now it lives with those who remembered Jennifer not as a victim, but as a person, a daughter, a friend, a woman who wanted more from life than the town she grew up in, a woman who was trying to find her way forward when everything suddenly stopped. There are still questions no one can answer. Why was her Jeep abandoned where it was? Why was she naked in the river? Why did critical evidence disappear? Why did so many investigative decisions seem to close doors instead of open them? Why did a photograph provoke such a powerful reaction, followed by silence? And perhaps the most painful question of all, what would have happened if just one moment had gone differently? If investigators had pressed harder? If a meeting had happened one night earlier? If evidence had been preserved instead of destroyed? If a witness's account had been acted on before time erased her voice? True crime isn't always about what happened. Sometimes it's about what didn't. Jennifer's case is filled with almost confessions, almost answers, and each almost adds another layer of frustration for those left behind. But frozen doesn't mean permanent. Cases thaw, people age, guilt shifts, loyalty erodes, secrets become heavier to carry as years pass. Moore believes that eventually, someone will decide the weight is too much, because secrets rarely disappear. They leak. They surface in unexpected places, offhand comments, deathbed conversations, moments of anger or fear. All it takes is one person choosing to speak. Jennifer's family waits for that moment, not for revenge, not for headlines, but for acknowledgement, for accountability, for the simple truth of knowing what happened to her and why. 15 years is a long time to live with unanswered questions. Long enough for a town to change. Long enough for witnesses to pass away. Long enough for memories to blur. But not long enough to forget. In Fannin County, Texas, Jennifer Harris's name still carries weight. It's spoken carefully, quietly, with a sense that something unfinished lingers beneath the surface. Her story remains unresolved, not because it doesn't matter, but because it matters too much to let go. Soft music fades. Jennifer Harris has been gone for more than 15 years, but the silence around her death is not acceptance. It is waiting. And somewhere, someone knows exactly how this story ends. They just haven't said it yet.